Good morning to all students and educators listening in. We are thrilled you can join us this morning. My name is Joshua Kelly, Education Manager with Junior Achievement of Southwest New England, a nonprofit organization dedicated to bringing financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and workforce readiness to young adults across Connecticut. Today, we partnered with the Middlesex Chamber of Commerce and Westbrook High School to welcome local government officials representing towns and cities from across Connecticut: Hartford, New Haven, Westbrook, and Essex. Today's discussion will focus on the purpose of municipal government, the roles and responsibilities of the panelists, their inspirations for choosing public service, their personal backgrounds, career opportunities, and how young adults interested can get involved. We know young adults are feeling greater anxiety than ever about what's to come. Careers in public service are an excellent way to make a difference in the future of your community, whether it's in the municipal, state, or national level. We hope today's discussion is one stepping stone of many to help provide you with confidence in building your future economic success and creating a positive footprint where you live. To everybody listening in, please know that while we can't see you, you are still welcome and encouraged to engage the panel throughout. There is a Q&A and chat function available. Please ask any questions for the panelists there. We ask that you be mindful of the language and the appropriateness of the question. Educators, if you have a class or a group of students with you, please write in the questions on their behalf. We will try to answer what we can in real time, but we'll save some time at the end for those questions as well. Todd, I saw that you just joined us. Did you want to just say a couple words of welcome?
Yes. Can you hear me? Just want to make sure you can hear me first before I talk. Yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Good morning. My name is Todd Corey. I am the chairman of the Middlesex County Chamber of Commerce Business Educational Partnership Program. We serve a link between our members' businesses and the educational leaders of Middlesex County and other surrounding areas. Our purpose is to enrich the educational process of our students. Our major sponsors are Eversource Energy, Pratt Whitney, Wesleyan University, Jewett Center for Community Partnerships, and Middlesex Community College. Thank you very much, Westbrook, for hosting this, and take it away. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Todd. All right, so with further ado, let's get started. Thanks to all the panelists for joining us this morning. Let's start with a simple question: who we are. When I say your name, please state your full name, where you work, your title, and please tell us, what does that title mean? Tell us a little bit about your roles and responsibility in daily work life. Senator Needleman, let's start with you. You're first on my screen.
Thank you so much, Josh, and thanks for doing this. This is great, and I hope that the young people listening actually get a better understanding of what we all do, and having young people involved in the process of governing and making decisions about how we all live is very important. So I'm Norm Needleman. I own a business, and I've been in business for 42 years. Later in life, at about 50, I got involved in local government as a selectman. Then I've been first selectman now for 10 and a half years. And I'm also a state senator, finishing out my second term and running for a third term.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Welcome. Happy to have you here, Senator Needleman. All right, Thea, you are next. Let's jump to you.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Thea Montanez. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the City of Hartford, and I've been in that role since February 2020. And prior to that, I was the Chief of Staff to Mayor Bronin. So I started my career working for the city in 2016. It was the first time that I had ever worked for local government. I never saw myself being in that position, and it's actually been one of the most fulfilling experiences that I've had. And as the COO, I manage the day-to-day operations on behalf of the mayor. We have a total of about 13 departments that help run our city, and that includes fire and police and the 911 dispatch center and public works and economic development and health and IT. And all of those departments, again, support our residents, our businesses, our schools, visitors to the city. And so I'm really, really proud to be able to be a part of this team, and also really grateful to be joining you this morning.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thea. First Selectman Hall, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thank you, Josh, and good morning, everyone. My name is John Hall. I'm the first selectman here in Westbrook, newly elected to this in November. I do, however, have 12 years' experience on the Board of Selectmen, and before that, nearly 30 years in Westbrook ZBA. So I've been involved in Westbrook leadership since the early 80s. Lived in town all my life. My family settled here in 1635 and started farming, which we continue till today. I farm about a 500-acre operation here with my wife, and I also own another business that keeps me off the street corners. But running a small town has its challenges, similar to Hartford, smaller scale, but we have all of those departments on a smaller scale, and we're responsible for those every day. I meet with department heads almost every day, informally or formally, and keep tabs on what's going on in the town from top to bottom, hopefully. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, First Selectman Hall. Appreciate having us here. Peter, let's turn over to you.
Good morning, Josh. Good morning, everyone. This is Peter Gillespie. I'm the town planner for the town of Westbrook. I'm relatively new to Westbrook, but I've been a planner in Connecticut for over 35 years. I work obviously for John Hall and the various boards and commissions here in town. And I'm happy to explain to you further in a little bit what a town planner does.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. Appreciate you joining us for today. And last but certainly not least, we have Alderwoman Edwards joining us actually today from Virginia. So welcome, Alderwoman Edwards. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Kim, I think you turned your video off. We can't hear you if you're speaking. Oh, okay. I think she might have gotten booted, so no problem. We'll jump to the next question. We'll give her a chance to introduce when she gets a chance. So let's dig in a little bit more on the functions of your position. So we have two first selectmen on our panel who represent the executive branch of municipal governance. What's the purpose of a first selectman? So I know we touched a little bit, on it, but Senator Needleman, First Selectman Hall, do you want to start us off?
I think I'll let John go first on this one.
Okay, so thanks, Norm. One of the big things we do is plan the budget and control the financial planning of the town. So we just finished formalizing our budget last evening with a joint meeting between the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen. This is a project that's been ongoing since around Thanksgiving. We ask our department heads to submit their proposed budgets or wish lists, if you will, of what they foresee expending in the next year for the town and all the projects that they might have that would be funded by capital money, including the Board of Education. And then the Board of Selectmen meets with all of those department heads throughout January. We formalize what we think is an appropriate budget forwarded by the Board of Finance. They exercise almost the same process, meeting with department heads and then meeting with us jointly. And last night we formalized our budget with an overall 2% increase in the budget over last year, which I think is holding the line very well in this era of high inflation and costs for things like insurances and fuels and labor costs and everything. So we spend a fair amount of time, a good probably 30% of our time in the year working on the budget and crafting the budget that would take effect July 1st. So that's a huge part of the job. The second thing, as I see it, is like I said, meeting with department heads and managing staff. We have excellent staff people and employees here in town and know what their jobs are and do their jobs, but there's still issues that have to be brought to this desk. And, you're at the top of the food chain here and make appropriate decisions and move on. So I think that summarizes a little bit of what I do here, at least the important things.
Yeah, thank you, John. And I'll just chime in. Everything that John said is true. In many ways, we act as facilitators in smaller towns. We do have department heads, but frequently those departments can be one person. So we are engaged in a lot of the decision-making and try to direct things, but we also interact with all the volunteer boards and commissions that these towns have. I think that unique in Connecticut's municipal government, especially in the small towns, is that it had traditionally been government by volunteer for a very, very long time. These are very New England type towns, and the structure of the town government is very much like that. It's evolving to a little bit more operational. I see that Kim is back. Hi, Kim. And you know, we solve problems, and I also see a big part of my job after this many years is strategic visioning for the town, interacting with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and creating a vision for the future of the town that I think has to align with the desires and interests of the town, and then mediating with the boards and commissions to make sure that that we achieve those goals. So I have to say, people have said to me that have left this job to do other things, that being a first selectman in a town in Connecticut is probably the best job you can ever have. Doesn't pay a lot, but it's a great job. And a lot of us come to it from different backgrounds. A lot of us are not specifically educated to be municipal governing leaders, but we learn. And as John said, you come up through the ranks. I served on boards and commissions before I became a selectman, and it brought me to the point where I felt confident enough to try to be, you know, on the Board of Selectmen and then first selectman. So I encourage young people, whether you make it a career or not, if you continue to live in Connecticut or wherever you live, to be involved, because you can have your finger on the pulse and affect change in the towns that you live in, no matter what. So, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Senator, and thank you so much, First Selectman. So, you know, and I always think of First Selectmen are very public facing, right? So, and sometimes, right, especially here in Connecticut, a lot of the small towns, right, you're really kind of the face of the town, right? So, excellent. So, thanks so much. All right. So, yeah, we're going to come over to you. So, as Chief Operating Officer in Hartford, you report to Mayor Bronin. You know, we tend to think of COOs, right, in a more corporate setting. So, you know, in the government, what is the role of Chief Operating Officer really entail?
Sure. So, you know, as you said, Josh, the mayor is essentially the CEO of the city. And similar to the company, in the private sector, right, a CEO is responsible for making decisions that impact employees and customers. And so as CEO of a city like the city of Hartford, our capital city, the mayor has a lot to do. And so he really counts on his COO to focus on the day-to-day operations of the city. And like I said, that includes 13 operating departments. We have a total of 1,400 employees and about a $600 million operating and capital budget. And so, you know, my job is really to support our department heads and our employees, and being able to support the needs of our residents and our business owners and visitors to the city of Hartford. And so, you know, that is what I try to do each and every day. It is not boring. I can promise you that. The city of Hartford, you know, like other cities throughout the state, has challenges that we have to work through each and every day. And, you know, I think, of course, we're currently in a pandemic. And so, you know, for the past 2 years, we have been working really hard to, you know, ensure that our residents have access to COVID-19 testing and vaccinations. We supported the school system, right, as they had to make a transition to remote learning. And so, you know, we helped, you know, enable that, right? And so, you know, we continue to work through COVID. I will say to you that we never had a remote work policy. And so literally at a flip of a switch, all of a sudden we had to find a way to work from home for those employees that could do that. But the vast majority of our employees could not do that, because they were police and they were fire and they were 911 dispatch, and trash still needed to get picked up. And those are all jobs that people have to show up to work each and every day to do. We are the city that actually in the state of Connecticut has the highest number of 911 calls in both police and fire. So again, we needed to ensure that our police and fire were still showing up because people need help. And we had to ensure that during COVID, they were protected as well as the folks that they were responding to. So, you know, a lot of my job is very much trying to solve complicated issues, which is referred to as crisis management, right? And so, you know, certainly there are times when there is a fire and there are 100 people that have lost their homes, maybe because they live in a really big residential building. And in the middle of the night, we have to find, where to house 100 people. And we do things like that often. In fact, we receive the most calls for service throughout the state, including fire. So that is one of the things we always have to be prepared to respond to. Just 2 years ago, we experienced one of the worst cyber attacks in history. It actually almost shut down the entire city, including the school system. And that included our 911 dispatch center. But luckily, because of the cybersecurity measures we have in place, we were able to avoid that. But it took us almost a year to recover from that. So, that's something that I was very involved in, right? How do I help our departments continue to operate, even though they may not have access to the technology that they used to? So like I said, typically when issues come to my desk, it is because, folks have not been able to try to figure out, how to solve it. So a lot of my work involves working with other departments. It involves working with tons of community groups, as well as the school system. And so I think that's probably one of the best parts of my job is I just get to work with so many great people every day that really love our capital city.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thea. And it seems like COO is kind of helping to make the big picture happen. So excellent. Alderwoman Edwards, glad that you're able to rejoin us. So why don't you do a quick little introduction, just tell us a little about you, and then just what's the function of the Board of Alders?
Okay, thank you for having me. I'm glad I'm back. I'm the problem child today, as you can see. But as we know, technology is a blessing and a curse wrapped up into one. My name is Kim Edwards. I'm an alder in the city of New Haven, and I represent Ward 19. And I love doing what I do. I'll be totally honest. As an elected official, because we are elected, I think of myself as a class representative, to be honest. There's many things we do. We are elected by voters, and what we typically do is we create, pass, and amend local laws. We also review and approve the city's annual budget, which is a really, really big thing. But we represent our constituents. I love representing my constituent base. I have a very diverse ward. I got a mini state of Connecticut in my one little ward. It's New Hallville, East Rock, and Prospect Hill. And we represent you. I feel like I'm an advocate for everyone because we get calls from city departments as well. And we want our city to function well. So if we have an issue with Public Works and Public Works needs funding, and I'm just using them as an example, and it's a benefit to our taxpayers, we want to make sure Public Works gets the funding they need. However, we also have to watch out for the taxpayers to make sure taxes aren't too high. So we're always juggling something. We juggle with Board of Ed, we juggle with every department and our constituents. I might get the call saying, hey, my sidewalk's cracked. I got a tree issue. So it's part-time, but it's not part-time. And I never thought I would be doing it. I'll be totally honest with you, but I do get joy out of being able to help people. And you have to advocate. And if you can't advocate for yourself, you need a strong advocate in there for you. So that's a day in the life of an alder. And we go to a lot of meetings,
Thanks so much, Kim. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then last but certainly not least, Peter, town planner, I have to say, I know a lot, but this one stumped me a little bit. So tell us a little bit about what are the responsibilities of the town planner?
Thanks, Josh. Since we're about to start the baseball season, I'm going to make a baseball analogy. I would classify a town planner as a utility infielder. I do a lot of different things. Every day is different. I work primarily with the development community. I'm the liaison between the town and developers, engineers, architects looking to do business here in town. So I spend a great deal of my time doing that, reviewing plans, reviewing architectural plans to make sure these projects fit in with the vision and the ideals that the town has set aside. As was also mentioned, I do attend a lot of night meetings. I work very closely with our various boards and commissions who are mostly volunteers. We have a planning commission, we have a zoning commission, we have an economic development commission, we have a town center revitalization commission. So I support all of those groups as they do their work to better the community. I also prepare and work on the longer term vision for the community. Taking a look at the 5-year, the 10-year, and the 20-year horizon to establish our policies and how we want the community to look into the future. And then lastly, I work on special projects. We are presently working very hard to improve our pedestrian sidewalk network throughout the community. We've got actually 4 different projects going through the pipeline right now. So I'm the point person for those projects. Fortunately, there are lots of grants out there. We've been able to successfully apply for and administer a number of grants, primarily through the state of Connecticut, to help us do that kind of work. So in a nutshell, those are the primary things that I do on a daily basis, but no day is the same. I do love working in town government, and it's a very rewarding career.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. And I do have actually just one quick question. So is there a board or a particular person that you report directly to?
I report directly and work directly for John Hall, our first selectman, but I also work on behalf of the chair people of the various boards and commissions. But John is my boss.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. All right, so let's start digging into some of these questions. So I think some of us kind of touched on this, right? What inspired you, right? So to get involved, we can touch a little bit on that, but what was your pathway to where you are today? So you could talk, if you're elected or hired, but for the student listening in, are there pathways on how they can get involved in governance? So anyone want to start us off?
Well,
Go for it, Thea. Oh, and then, sorry. How about we'll let First Selectman Hall go. I tell you I'm muted, and Thea, we'll let you go. So go ahead, John.
so having lived in town all my life, I have an interest in town, and over the years I've acquired a number of properties. So to me, taxes and budget are number one concern. So it's always been my interest. However, I can remember as a teenager, I met with a neighbor, a man named Ralph Stein, who probably most of you have never heard of, who was an author years ago, and he was also a cartoonist and syndicated and drew Popeye for a number of years in a little studio in Westbrook up in the country near where I am. And he used to smoke these big fat cigars, and he said to me one day, "Young man, if you're going to stay in town, you should get involved in the leadership of town, get into the government." And he encouraged me, and then some other folks did as I developed into a young man, and I obviously led me on the path to where I am at this point. But as far as young people get involved, you can serve on boards and committees as soon as you're 18, even as alternates. And I think that's a great place to start. Get yourself appointed, apply to get to be an alternate on some committee or commission, even if it's just an ad hoc advisory one, and you'll see how government works and you'll get a feel for it. And like Norm said, you come up through the pipeline. And that's exactly what I did.
Excellent. Thank you so much, First Selectman. Thea, and then Kim, I do see your hand up, so we'll let Thea go, and then we'll hear from you, Kim.
Great, thank you. So, I think I mentioned this earlier, I never saw myself doing this work, especially in Hartford, where I was born and raised. And then eventually we moved out to Bloomfield, which is where I graduated high school from. But I spent all of my life growing up counting the days until I would leave to a bigger city like New York. So I always saw myself living in New York City, working in the fashion industry, on the business side of it. And after I graduated college, that's exactly what I did. So I lived in New York for a couple of years. I worked for a couple of designers. And believe it or not, I became bored very quickly. I felt like the work I was doing didn't matter. I saw in New York how proud people were to be New Yorkers, and how many people were working hard to make New York a really great place to live and work. And it made me think about my hometown in Hartford. And I decided I wanted to be one of those people to do the same for Hartford. So I came back not knowing exactly where to start, but I just started asking people to meet. And in a city like Hartford, people were willing to make the time, unlike New York City, where you can't get past the front desk. People in Hartford made the time to meet with me. And eventually, I went on this journey. I was on this path, and I still am, trying to figure out how to create the most value for the community. So I ended up volunteering. I ended up working for a nonprofit. I ended up working for an insurance company, helping give out money to the community. I then ended up having my own small business. And then I was recruited by Mayor Bronin to work for the city of Hartford. So again, never saw myself doing this, but like I said, it's one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my career.
And I'll just make a note, for students listening in, right? You said you went to school, right? You ended up doing the business side of finance. So did you, was it some kind of finance degree from college?
It was actually a dual major, consumer studies and fashion merchandising. I, wanted to be a buyer, which involves a lot of math. And so, after working for a couple of designers in New York City, I decided I did not want to sit on my, in front of my computer playing with Excel spreadsheets. And that was also one of the reasons I started to rethink what I wanted to do. And it was really scary because for the majority of my high school and college career, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And then I found myself doing it and then realized I didn't want to do it. So certainly there was a point in time where, like I said, it was overwhelming, but eventually one thing led to another, and here I am.
Excellent. I'm sure your consumer studies background helps you in your role now. All right, Alderwoman, tell us a little bit about your path.
All right, my path is very different. I actually represent the neighborhood I grew up in. I did not go to college after I graduated high school. I was supposed to, but we have financial difficulties. It did not work out the way it was supposed to. And I started community college. I didn't go all the way through. I didn't finish like I was supposed to. I am the youngest of 9 children. I was the child that got dragged to every school's PTA meeting, every fundraiser committee meeting, every Italian dinner making meatballs meeting, and every community meeting. So my path started there. I, as a small child, I palm carded. It's probably child against child labor laws now, but I palm carded for Rosa DeLauro. I palm carded for other people in my neighborhood because my mom was involved, and I could not wait to get the right to vote. I couldn't wait to turn 18 and grow up. I have cuts from envelopes, from stuffing envelopes for campaigns when I was younger. So your path, all our paths may be very different, but if you want to get involved on the smallest level. You can even ask simple questions of the people that represent you in your community. Ask questions. You don't have to be on a committee to show interest and be a part of something. Like I said, I feel like I equate myself to a class representative. I am your representative. You represent, you ask questions, you go out there. So that is how I started my path, just by simply being a child of a person that was in it. My mom also wasn't elected. And I always said, I would never do that because I saw how much work she did. I'm just going to be honest. And like, you become a social worker, a doctor, a policeman, a counselor, you're all of that when you're doing this kind of stuff, believe it or not. Because if you may not be the person you're supposed to go to, but you may know a resource for someone. So your experience will be invaluable. Any way you can get involved, get involved. If there is not a youth council or something in your area, start one or help. But no job is too small when you're doing this kind of work. I don't care if it's about climate change, energy, a neighborhood cleanup, whatever it may be. And also look into the polls, go visit your polls, do a trip when we have election days and different things like that. But my path is very different from most, but like I said, I love representing my community. Although I always said I would never do it, I wasn't interested, but I became involved in this part of being elected because there was someone that came to my community that was running for this position. And I jumped in because they were not committed. They wanted a title, and that was too much for me. So that's my story.
Excellent. Thank you, Cam. And I can relate. My grandmother is the registrar of voters in Cromwell. I got forced into working elections, and now I moderate them, and I absolutely love it. So it's a great feeling. Senator, tell us a little bit about your path.
To unmute. Yeah, so I mean, everybody has a different path into this. In the early 1970s, when I was in college, it was an interesting political time. There was a lot of division in the country, and I became politically aware, like in my freshman year of college. But having grown up in New York City, whereas Thea said, it's very hard to break into getting involved there. It wasn't really in the cards. So I continued to be interested in it, but went on, entered the business world. It's not my background either. My background is math degree. I thought I was going to be a teacher. That did not work out after 1 month of teaching. And I ended up getting a job in a company. I mean, I worked for my father in his grocery store. I drove a cab for 4 years. I had a bunch of different jobs until I got out of college. And then was very fortunate to meet the right people and succeed in business. Started my own company in 1979. Always wondered what I was going to do after, the business side of my life. And as both John and I had said, you live in these small towns. It was only by accident that I ended up here, but you live in these small towns and everybody should be involved because that's how this works here. Everybody should have a role. The 1970s, there was a very, very famous phrase, you're either in the game or not in the game. And if you're trying to make a difference, this is a great way to do it. So when a friend of mine ran for first selectman, he asked me if I wanted to run with him. I did. We served together for 8 years. And when he left to be in the General Assembly, I ran for first selectman and have done it now. This is my 6th term. And in 2016, I ran for the Senate and lost. In 2018, I ran for the Senate again and won, and then won again in 2020. And I will say that there is a huge difference between being a legislator and as Kim said, a lot of the job of a legislator is facilitating and being there and listening to people and trying to put them in touch with the services that they need. That's really actually one of the most rewarding parts of it because it's constituent services. You're helping people and you can help people. It's like a little morass of things you have to do, but it's great. And I've had great interns that were young, great legislative aides that were young, and I marvel at it. The only comment I would have, and I've spoken to young people quite a bit, and they're encouraged, excited about being involved in politics. And I've never enjoyed that side of the job. Some people love it. I look at it as public service. We all, if our society is going to be a better place for all of us, we all have an obligation to participate. And that's why it's public service. The politics side of it is collateral. And it's not what drives me. What drives me is the public service part of it.
Excellent. And Peter, I'm going to call on you in just a second because I actually have a very specific question for you. But Senator, just one quick question. You mentioned aides. and that you work with some great young ones. Are there any kind of specific, if someone listening wants to become one, is it that they are kind of going to college for something? Is it just passion? So just any kind of qualifications or anything needed?
I can speak for the Senate Democrats, but all four caucuses in the legislature put out a call for volunteers and interns, and don't have to come necessarily from a political science background. You have to have an interest. And, we hired an intern 2 years ago who, when our committee clerk, I chair the Energy and Technology Committee, when he went on to take a job working for the local council of government, we needed a new committee clerk, which is a really important job because you actually organize the operation of the committee and you keep everybody on the committee informed. We moved our my intern, into the committee clerk position. And now he's done it for 2 years and he's going on to law school. So we have all kinds of interns. Some people start out as interns, end up, getting a job as a committee clerk or a legislative aide or a policy person. And many of them go on to run for office. Senator Flexer up in the northeast corner by Yukon is an example of that. She came in as either a legislative aide and she worked her way through, became a state rep. Now is a very influential senator who heads the GAE committee, and she's terrific because she represents the whole area around Eastern Connecticut and Yukon. And it's an example of people. Senator Lesser is another person who's now running for Secretary of State, who started out in one job and has worked his way through. So there's a lot of opportunity. It's not a tremendous amount of money. Some people use it as a stepping stone for other careers. The bottom line is get involved, apply. We want you. We need help. We need people. We want young people because they make people like me feel younger.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Senator. And so, Peter, just a little bit, how did you get to where you are, town planner? And I did have actually a question for you. Are there any types of qualifications or degrees that were needed, or just anything in your background that really helped you as town planner?
Thanks, Josh. Funny story. When I went to college, I planned on being a dentist, and now I'm a city planner. A couple of tough organic chemistry classes kind of changed my direction, but I had a particular professor in college who was an urban geographer who captivated my interest in planning and city planning. I did not know until that time that there was such a profession as planning, but I was fortunate to get a scholarship to go to graduate school. So I have a master's degree in planning. So that was a very fortuitous scenario for me where I was able to afford the ability to get an upper level degree and get a focus in the planning profession. So that's my simple story. Otherwise, you'd be interviewing me in my dentist office. Yes, planners. There's a national certification for planners. It's the AICP, which stands for the American Institute of Certified Planners. It's a national exam that's offered periodically. It's a combination of experience, skills, and then passing this national examination. So we do have such a thing in the planning profession as similar to other professions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Peter. All right. So, this has kind of come up a couple of times, so I figured it's probably a good time to ask. So, when involved in municipal government, does this tend to be people's full-time jobs, or do you juggle other careers? I know some of us have kind of touched on this, so I kind of wanted to find out, are there some positions that are paid versus unpaid? We talked about volunteer-based, right? And so, students listening in might be wondering, okay, I'm looking at my time, how much can I volunteer versus how much time can I give, but need to be able to get paid for it. So, so anyone want to kind of start us off a little bit on that question?
I'm happy to do that. So in smaller towns, I can't speak for the cities, but in smaller towns, almost all the board and commissions from the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, zoning, planning, or planning and zoning in some towns are combined, conservation. All of these commissions are volunteer positions, and obviously some require more effort than others. In our town, for example, like the Conservation Commission, which oversees a lot of the conservation land that we have, they meet once a month, but they're all kind of involved with maintaining conservation properties. So they get out into the woods and they clean trails, like the land trust in our town, hands-on. Board of Ed is a good one. I have a good friend who grew up in Westbrook. He lives in Essex. He's been our chair of the Board of Ed. But as soon as he got out of college, he ended up getting on the Board of Ed in Westbrook and served there, and now is served here. That's a little more complicated, but very rewarding. He did it for 15, 20 years before he had kids, and now he has kids and he has a slightly different perspective on it. But each one, there are positions that can fit your time and availability. All of those are unpaid. The only paid positions in Essex are town clerk, tax collector, treasurer. They're paid different amounts of money because they take different amounts of time. Board of Selectmen is a very small stipend for selectmen. First selectman typically gets paid a little less than a town manager would in the same size town, but it's a different type of a responsibility. You're the political face of the town as well as the chief operating officer. So you do both jobs, and everybody thinks you're responsible for everything, even when you're not. So the pay rate for that is, depending on the town, it could be awful or pretty decent.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you, Senator. And, I know in Cromwell, the registrar of voters are also paid, right? But again, it's
Yes.
all relative, right? Because it's part-time. So excellent. Alderwoman, I saw your hand come up. So great. I was going to actually, I think Senator did a great job kind of from a small town perspective. So I did want to hear a little bit about cities, right, which do have a larger workforce involved. So Alderwoman, we'll start with you. And then Thea, I'd love, as COO, I'm sure you have a lot to say on it as well. So
I'll make it brief. You asked about my position, correct? As in my capacity as an elected official, I do get a stipend. My stipend is $100 and maybe $50 a month, plus some taxes. So I do get a stipend, but I have a real job as well. I have a full-time job. I work at Frontier Communications. I've been there 26 years. And I also am a member of CWA Local 1298, which is a union I represent. And I do work for them as well twice a week. So I have other jobs that I need to provide for my family, myself, and to get my health care. So I do get a stipend as an elected, but I can't live off of it. So, but I enjoy doing what I do because I enjoy serving my community. So you're definitely not in this for the money. I'm glad that you asked that question, Josh, because and I'm gonna hurry up. I'll wrap it up. But I got a call from a good friend of mine who lives in a different area of the city, which means she has a different representative. And she wasn't happy with something that was going on over there. So I listened to her. And then there was a statement, about kickbacks or paybacks or getting something. And I had to break the news to her that I can't take a McDonald's cheeseburger. If it costs over $25, that's the only kickback I can get. Anything under $25. So if that's what you think your representative is doing, you're sadly mistaken. You're definitely not in this for the money. You're in it for the love of serving. And if you're not in it for that reason, don't do it.
excellent. Thank you, Alderwoman. And, and I think, you'll be able to give a little bit of perspective, right? Because I think you are, right, full-time paid position, right, in the city of Hartford. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, a city is in a town, it's 24/7, right? Unlike a business where most folks go to work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. If you're involved in helping manage a community, it is nights and weekends and holidays. Anytime there is any sort of incident that occurs in the city of Hartford, whether it is a fire or an act of violence, my phone rings. It is rung at 3 a.m. and I've had to go to work. It's certainly rings a lot when it snows and most people are able to stay indoors. And our job is to make sure that the streets are cleaned, right? And our sidewalks are cleaned. I've, certainly worked on holidays, Christmas and Thanksgiving. Tends to be a busy time for us when things come up. And so I would say that there really is no days off when you're doing this work, right? Because the community needs what it needs. And so I have a full-time position along with the overwhelming majority of our city employees. They are all mostly full-time employees. And, a lot of our salaries, especially myself and the mayor and other members, our department heads are all set by local law. And so unlike the private sector where, sometimes there are bonus programs and things of that nature, we don't have that. Frankly, nor do I think we necessarily should, because again, when you're doing this work, you're doing this for a community. So you're certainly not driven by salary and the benefits that comes along with it. It definitely is a higher calling. We in the city of Hartford we have a city council that's comprised of 9 people. Each of them receive a stipend of about $15,000 a year. And then we have about 30 city boards and commissions, and the overwhelming majority of those city boards and commissions consist of volunteers who are not paid. So they are showing up to meetings at least once a month. Some of them certainly meet more. And again, they are doing all of that work on a volunteer basis.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thea. And then just, from Westbrook. So First Selectman Hall, I know Norm kind of mentioned a little bit, right, in Essex to get the stipend. Is it similar? And then Peter, I'll let you follow up. I think you kind of touched on it, but just, are you a full-time paid position in town? So go ahead, John.
So being the elected first selectman, it's a salary position here in Westbrook. There's no set hours, but as Thea said, you're on 24/7, 365. You walk around your town. We're a town of right around 7,000 folks. Most people know who you are. If you're in the coffee shop, they have questions and concerns. If you're out at dinner, they have questions and concerns. I sneak into Norm's town a lot of times late at night for dinner where they don't know me as well over there because my wife and I need a little bit of downtime. Having said that, the cell phone still goes off at 10 o'clock. You've got people that are displaced. Your fire department's out, your emergency management, everybody's out, and you have to make some decisions and you have to get people taken care of. So you're on 24/7. I don't sit at this desk 40 hours. But you spend way more than 40 hours a week at the job. Our last 2 evenings, the Board of Finance meetings adjourned at 9:30 and 9 o'clock, started at 5:30. That's just one meeting. I was told when I was recruited as a Board of Selectmen member that Board of Selectmen only meets 2 meetings a month. It's not too big of a deal. Yeah, right. Then maybe you should attend a Board of Finance meeting. Maybe you should meet with the library board. Maybe you should meet with this one or that one. It's constant 24/7. So you're always on and you're always solving problems.
Thank you so much, First Selectman. Peter, go ahead.
Yes, I'm a full-time position. I work in the land use department. The land use department also has a full-time building official. We have full-time staff who support the health department that we work with. We also have a wetlands and conservation official who's also pretty much full-time. So we are here, basically 8 till 5 each day. And it was also mentioned, it's not unusual that I would spend 2 or 3 nights here as well, working at public meetings, supporting our boards and commissions who meet on a very regular basis, doing various tasks and responsibilities that go with those particular boards and commissions. So that's my situation. Yes.
Excellent. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And I think, for students listening, I think they've got a really good picture, right, of the different types of opportunity, right? What's paid versus, what are things to get in the door or volunteer at passion, right? And so, we have about 10 minutes. So I will mention any educators, students, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in. I do know that we did get a question. So, we hear more and more, right, about how important, right, different soft skills are. Conflict management and conflict resolution is actually a big one. And I think, right, when you're in public service, right, that's a major part of your job. So, we did get a question in the chat. as an elected official, you can never make everyone happy, right? And elected or hired, right? You know, front facing, right? How do you deal with always knowing many people disagree with you, right? It seems like a lot of stress. So I will let, I'm gonna kind of put it out to the group, but I was gonna start with Peter. How front facing is your job? Do you have to deal with pushback? And then I'll open up to the larger group.
Yes, we are very public-facing positions. We have a public counter. I can hear over my shoulder right now some folks at the counter asking some questions, and we do get on a very regular basis folks come in who are upset about a particular issue or something going on in their neighborhood that we have to deal with. My practice has been to listen, very closely and try and understand their perspective, and then in a positive way explain that there are rules, there are regulations, there are procedures, there are things that have to be done in order to get through various processes. And usually using those techniques, we can come to an understanding. We might not necessarily agree with each other, but we certainly understand each other's positions and can then move forward from there. But yes, we do, as I've said, at public meetings can be very contentious. So there are certain skills that have to be applied in order to deal with those situations on a very regular basis. So conflict management, unfortunately, is a big part of the job.
Thank you, Peter. And I can say my Nana is on planning and zoning, and I know your exact strategy has been her strategy for about 30, 40 years. So thank you. All right. So I'll open that up to the larger group.
I will speak on it quickly. I always look into my moral compass. And people think when you go in there, you're voting on a budget or you're voting on someone to become a chair of something, or you're electing a new chief or appointing a new chief. It's a hard thing to do sometimes, because you'll have 20 people over here in your ear saying this person's an angel, they're great, blase boo, blase this. But on the other end, you have people with a different view or a different, just concept of what this person should be like. So it's always a moral dilemma for me, whether it's our mill rate or whatever. I think of every scenario. You can get yourself sick, to be honest, but I always do it based on the information. I definitely read my stuff because that's very important as an elected. I will tell you in a minute, I'm no rubber stamp. We have heated caucuses because we like to speak about our stuff off the floor when we can. And it becomes taxing, and you have to separate your personal from your professional. I have people that I go like this, like they call me a bull sometimes. I mean, you're arguing, you're going back and forth, but I'm gonna vote for the greater good of my constituents, with an understanding that sometimes they may not be happy. But because I have all this information, I have the full picture on how it affects our cities. And it's just like, I want my streets to be clean with pine sol and shined up and waxed, but do I want to pay that? Are you willing to pay that? So you definitely get pushback. And I will end by saying this. I gave my mother a hard time as an elected. So I know I'm going to get it from everywhere. I'll be like, I can't believe you voted yes on this. Now I understand why sometimes you vote a certain way.
Thank you, Alderwoman. All right. Any other thoughts?
I'll just say,
Here, we'll go Thea, and then Senator, we'll open you. So go ahead, Thea.
yeah, that's the question that's being asked is probably one of the most popular questions that I receive. When you represent so many different types of people, whether it's business owners or residents, adults, students, right? How do you meet all of their needs? And it's something, we try our best to do. It certainly does require to listen, but to also at times be brave. Because we have to be able to do hard things, and you cannot, be doing this to be the most popular or well-liked, because, that's not always, if I think you're going to be effective in trying to serve the needs of the community, that's not a it's not going to always happen, right? So you have to do what's in the best interest of the community as a whole. And sometimes you try to find a compromise and you try to find, you know, a way to meet people in the middle. And the reality is you don't always are able to do that. And so you just got to be okay with that and know that you tried. And again, that you made the best decision based on the information that you had, you know, and given the resources that you had available to you. I will say one of the things that I've experienced working in local government is that oftentimes, you know, when we are trying to fix a problem or trying to address a resident concern, you know, I experienced this early on in my career. You know, I would ask folks in the city, why do we do it that way? And I was always met with, well, we've always done it that way. And so again, it at times took a lot of persistence and courage to push myself and our team to ask ourselves, well, what's another way that we can do it, right? And during the past 2 years in this country, as we've experienced this national social justice movement, right, we as local officials and government have had to rethink the way that we do business and the way that, you know, we interact with community members, specifically law enforcement. And so, you know, we have spent a lot of time working with the community in our police department, right, to figure out how do we, again, respond to the changing needs of community. And again, that requires to listen and to learn and to be open to making those changes. But again, like I said, it also at times required a lot of courage and humility and patience.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Thea. And then Senator, go ahead.
Yeah, I think a lot of people spoke on this already. All I will say is you do your best to do the right things, knowing that not everybody is going to agree with you. You know, in local government, it's a little different than at the state level. I think that the last time I had an opponent was almost 3 years ago, and I won 75-25, and that's not the voter balance in town. So it's much less partisan. People do want people who do a good job, and you're close to delivering the services. Certainly the problems that Essex or Westbrook have are not in the same universe as the problems that a Hartford or a New Haven or a Bridgeport have. And that's, you know, the challenges of dealing with the intractability, even in Eastern Connecticut, concentrations of poverty in certain areas of the state are something that we're all looking to solve. And it's hard to fix those problems. So you're not going to be loved by everybody. And literally everything you try to do costs money, and nobody, as John said, likes to pay more taxes. But I've always looked at my job in running the town as creating the vision, executing efficiently against the vision, and making sure that we're giving the taxpayers the best bang for their buck. And most people in town respect that. At the state level, you have a much more partisan environment. You know, in my district, I don't think that any job that I do will win me much more than 55% of the vote, because people look and vote, you know, for a Democrat or a Republican, and then for the candidate. So I think it's dangerous in some of the districts that are so insulated from the decisions that they make, where a Democrat always wins or a Republican always wins. That's generally not great, in my opinion, because I think that everybody should be evaluated based on the job they do, not the party that they're in. And I find some of that a little difficult. So a friend of mine, when he ran for first selectman years ago, I said to him, because he ran a local nature camp in town and everybody loved him. And I said, when he told me he wanted to run for first selectman, I said, you know that half the people in town are just going to hate you because you're a Democrat. And the other half are going to love you because you're a Democrat. Why do you want to do that? And he said, because he knew he could make a difference. So you accept that even if you like to please everybody, that you're not, and you're elected to make the best decisions you can, fully well knowing that they're not going to all be right all the time. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Senator. Okay, so it is 10:45. You know, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So There was one question in the chat. Is there anyone that needs to hop off right this second? I'll give you last chance to say final words. All right, so we'll do the question in the chat, and then we're just gonna do kind of final close out, to the students. So the question in the chat kind of goes in, so it's gonna be kind of a two-parter. And if we could, maybe just a couple of answers, I think will be good for that. So I was gonna ask, where can one look for an entry level or volunteer opportunity? Everyone mentioned, right? So how do they, if they want to take that next step and get involved on a board, volunteer somewhere, get involved at an election, what are their next steps? And it does kind of tie in, our aides who are usually in college paid for part-time positions. So we'll kind of just combine them in. So anyone want to take it away on that?
I'll start. I know in the city of New Haven, you can either go to our website, you can go to City of New Haven, and you can look up Board of Alders, and you can actually just call our legislative office to get information about our boards and commissions, or go to our city website and look up our boards and commissions. There should be a number to call or a link that tells you what availability we have, because even for students, like we have our youth commission. I'm head of youth services for our Board of Alders, and we often try to connect with different programs and get our youth connected that way. And we also have a great youth and recreation department office. They sometimes need interns as well, because you can become an intern in many of our city departments. We have people that started as high school interns, and then they become interns when they go to college, if that's the pathway they take. And some of them were able to come back and they're actually employed by our city of New Haven. And it's in so many different departments, whether it's corporation counsel, engineering, or our departments. So if you're interested in doing something like that in the city of New Haven, give us a call or go to our website. Even if you're just interested in getting information about our meetings, everything will be there. So I do think the way we have it structured and set up, it's a good pathway for students to get involved.
All right, so how about just at a small town level, First Selectman Hall or a senator, if someone's, listening from a small town, maybe from Westbrook or Essex, any kind of way they can find out where they might be able to get involved?
Yeah, I'll just call town hall. My assistant in town hall has the list. You can also do it through the political parties, because frequently the Democrats recommend members, to the different boards and commissions, or the Republicans do, and the town committees have had a long history in Essex of being involved in that process. And then sometimes when they're, not that organized, I'll just interview people, and I tend never to look at what party. I want people that are qualified, that are open-minded, that are not partisan on these boards and commissions, because our towns have had a long history of not having partisan boards and commissions for the most part. I know Essex, we've striven for that. And many times, the interesting thing about the small towns is that you have about, as my colleague on the Board of Selectmen, who used to be a first selectman, he's a Republican, said, there's like a 2-month silly season every 24 months. And then you get to work to do the work of the residents of the town. That's what we try to do. We even try to make silly season less silly when we can. So just call, reach out, email me, at my town email address, email me at my state email address. And if you're interested, I'm sure we can find something.
And I'll just do a quick follow-up, because I think you're probably in the best position for this. So you had mentioned legislative aid, things like that. Are those paid positions?
So a legislative aide is a paid position, an intern is not a paid position, but a lot of people get involved. Like my current legislative aide who's sitting here to my left right now. He was involved in political campaigns. He's from Middletown, and he's 23, 24 today. Today is his birthday. We'll say hello to him today. Happy birthday. And when my legislative aide moved on to work for Congressman Courtney, she helped me find her replacement, which I thought was fabulous. So, that's a paid position. It's a great starting job in the legislature, and you sort of interact with everybody in that position. You interact with the other legislators, with the legislative aides, with the committee clerks, and with the advocates. The Energy Committee is the most lobbied committee in the legislature because we're responsible for electricity and water and the grid and all kinds of stuff and climate change in a major way. So we have everybody lobbying us from the utilities on down. And you meet with all these people, and a lot of people either stay involved in government or move into one of the advocacy groups or into the private sector and work for companies or go on to lobby, which is a somewhat honorable profession, somewhat.
Thank you, Senator. And I will just mention, just from personal experience, reach out to your local registrar of voters office, get involved in election time. I know not every town pays, but a lot of them do pay for you to be there for the day. It's a long day. It's exhausting, but it's great. All right. And then go ahead. First Selectman, I saw you wanted to add in something. Go ahead.
I'd just like to add very briefly for the young folks that are watching this, and remind them all meetings are open to the public, except for minor executive sessions where something is sensitive. But they may not want to jump into a planning commission position, but go to a planning meeting, and all meetings now are hybrid. They can just log on and check it out and see if it's something they have interest in. If not, check out another area, conservation, wetlands, zoning, there's all kinds, but they're all public meetings. They're all open to the public. You can Zoom on, you can attend in person and see what you think and evaluate for yourself if it's something you want to be interested in, involved in. Thank you.
Fantastic advice, John. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So we'll close out. I'm going to do a two-part question for each of us. So it's got to be quick, but best part of your job, what wakes you up in the morning and gets you ready for it, and just final kind of piece of advice. And I think a lot of us have given some advice, so it's okay if you just echo something, but so we'll just do, just really quickly, 2 sentences, best part of your job and final piece of advice. Who'd like to kick us off?
I'll go first. And the best part of the job for me is interacting with all of our citizens. I appreciate the people. There's some that come in here every day with comments. There's some that call me. And again, you run into them all over town. I think that's the best part of the job. The second part of that question again, Josh, remind me.
Oh, just final piece of advice.
Final piece, keep the politics out of it in these small towns. I agree with Norm. You have to campaign, you have to do that to get elected to these positions. But 27 years chairing zoning board of appeals, I told every new person that come in, and the same thing on the board of selectmen, you leave that hat outside the door. This is a small town. You do what's best for the town and try to move the town forward every time and every day you do or make a decision. Leave the politics at the door after the election.
Thanks so much, First Selectman. All right, Peter, I see you. Go for it.
Best part of my job is working with folks who are starting up businesses, and then seeing them start, seeing their businesses grow, and seeing the success that they experience over time. So very, very rewarding for me. In terms of advice, even if the students don't ultimately get involved in government as a career, whatever you end up doing, think about volunteering for your community. As John mentioned, in some capacity, we rely so heavily on volunteers, particularly in small towns, to run things. So think about that as you move on in life.
Thanks, Peter. And I think that's a great thing, right? Watching those businesses grow, right? Those are really a vital part of your community. So, being able to see those start and grow, right, to the benefit of everybody. Excellent. All right. I'm going to call on, Alderwoman, I'll call on you next.
I'm sorry. Same question, Josh. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm sorry because I can't hear anybody. Best part of my job, I'm going to echo what Mr. Gillespie and Mr. Hall said, is doing something for my constituents. I love when I fight for something, because sometimes you really got to fight and it takes a while. You don't see the change overnight, but when you fight it and it happens, and your constituents are happy now, I love that, because it's for the greater good of all of us. And you got to also remember, as he said, you keep the politics out of it, even though it is politics. I think it applies in a city as well, because you represent everyone. It doesn't matter if you voted for me, you didn't vote for me, if you're not a registered voter even. We represent everyone, and you have to represent everyone equally. So put your smile on your face, make them calls, knock out who you got to knock out to get your job done. And as students, just do the best you can do. Don't let anybody steal your joy from you, and do what you need to do for you and be successful.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. Norm, and then Thea, I'll let you close this out. So go for it, Senator.
Yeah, get involved. Be part of the solution and not part of the problem, and figure out where you want to go. Try a bunch of things, and remember, as you sort of move on into life, you're here in part to serve your own needs and ends and build a life for yourself. But remember that there's a community aspect to what we all aspire to. No matter where you are, there's a role for you in making your town, the state, the country, the world a better place. Advocate, fight, believe in something, and commit some amount of your energy to doing that, because it really does make a difference.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Senator. And Thea, we'll let you close out. So best part of your job and final piece of advice.
Sure. Best part of my job is I get to work for the community that helped raise me, that I care very deeply about. And I'm in a position where I can, create solutions again, and not be part of the problem, but be part of the solution. Words of advice is that, you don't necessarily have to know what it is that you're going to do for the rest of your life. You're probably going to do at least 10 or 20 different things. And whatever it is that you are doing, do it well. Do the work. Just focus on the quality of the work, and the work speaks for itself.
Excellent. Thank you, Thea. So big thank you to all the panelists joining. We know how busy you all are, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us. A big thank you to the Middlesex Chamber of Commerce and Westbrook High School for helping to put this together, and especially to the educators and students listening in. We wish you all the best of luck this school year. Todd, if you have any final closing remarks?
No, just thank you very much for everyone, and really appreciate everything that everyone does. So thank you.